maybe you know, but probably you don't, that 5 years ago today was my first Wednesday at Agape. Just unreal thinking about the kind of journey it's been so far. I still remember the moving truck had come to our house. I had gotten the movers headed in the right direction and introduced them to their boss. That would be my wife. And as they beheld all of the rooms in our house with all of the boxes, and I heard some choice words about how long it was going to take, I actually said goodbye and drove that morning up, and I made it just in time for staff meeting that day. And then we came into Wednesday night, and just really, really incredible thinking about all the things that came along with 5 years ago. And then I went and spent the night at Jeff and Sean Hill's lake house for the night, and then got up the next morning, and then a bunch of folks from Agape came and cleaned the house that we had just bought. And some of y'all were there for that. I still remember Miss Louise sitting on the back swing under the garage there after everything was kind of done. She'd been working, right? She'd been working, yeah. But then what was funny was y'all rolled out, and then Mandy rolled into a house that she'd never seen, that she'd only seen on FaceTime, which was a miracle in itself. And so we've been there for 5 years, and so that means this Sunday will be exactly 5 years as pastor, 5 years from the date of my induction service. So just really, I thought today was a good opportunity for us to reflect and celebrate. And so even though I'm sharing this with you, we're recording this because what I want to do is I want to give some updates also on some things that are happening with the Community Care Village, because once again, as we celebrate, we recognize we're in a season where we are praying, we are moving, we are volunteering, we're jumping in, we're asking for the Lord to continue to do things. And so so God is good in all these things. We've had new friends and new family members, literally, added to our family during this past 5 years. We've seen just God move in some incredible ways. We've baptized lots of people. But then I was thinking about like those first years. We endured COVID together. Y'all remember that, right? It's hard to forget. Yeah, we had the service on the roof. There are still people to this day who that's why they started coming. They heard that we were doing drive-in church and the band, and I was preaching from the roof. And y'all remember that? If y'all were here that Sunday morning, y'all remember that Sunday morning where we had that tent and it blew off the roof because the wind was so... Golly. But since then, just thinking about children's ministry and VBS events and fall festivals and Night to Shine and jail ministry and small groups and men's and women's activities, youth ministry, Joy Club, prayer ministry, the worship ministry, the shift to this, from the evening services to midweek, and then having people like Belinda take over the kitchen on Wednesday nights, right, to where now we're feeding all these kids on Wednesday nights, and we're having this meal together that Cheryl provides for us each week. We hired Gary, and he's doing the ministry to Rosewood. We started discipleship groups this year. We're starting the Agape Ministry Academy in the fall. Max retired as associate pastor, but then moved into the official role of the president of the board for the Community Care Village. Dakota took over the youth ministry. Cheryl celebrated 20 years as the church affairs specialist. I think that's what your title is on her desk. And so just all of these things, I think about when Cheryl and Devon and me and Gary and Kira and Dakota all sit down for staff meeting. Now I think about like when I first came, there were some of the offices were being used as storage and different things like that. And now the table is almost full and the offices are full in the hallway, right? And so I think about just a lot of grace poured out on us as we've had to add chairs to the back to the worship center, so that there's enough room for people. We had staff retreat a couple weeks ago, and it's nowhere near in the future, but we said, what would it look like for us to have 2 services? Once again, I don't want that, but if God pours out that growth on us, we just want to be ready. But we're just thinking about all those things, and it feels like longer than 5 years in a positive way, because of the speed at which God has moved. And so I thought today was a good day just to thank the Lord for that, and then also to update you on just some things happening with the Community Care Village. You think about, next month it'll be 2 years since we voted to say yes, Lord, we'll go wherever you tell us, whatever door you open, we'll walk through it with the Community Care Village. And so let me kind of move into now kind of talking about how all the Lord is moving. It is. I mentioned it Sunday. I think 20 years from now we're going to look back on this season and just continue to stand in awe about all that God has done, and specifically during this season, all of the ways that He moved and all the people that He mobilized to get it done. I mean, one of the things that happened on Monday night was we finally got this entire property rezoned, right? 57 acres, rezoned to include a number of different zones so that we can accommodate the Community Care Village. That was huge, right? And Mike Ashburn was like reassuring me the whole time. I don't know if you realized you were doing that, but I was kind of, every time I'd have to go before the city council, I'd look up to Mike's face, and it just, he was my comfort zone. But then I think about, really 2 years ago, even before the Community Care Village started, we started the Fostering Love Community Closet. It was in May or June that we did that, and then Sharon almost immediately came on as the director of that. And the board there was established with Larry and Devon and Heath and Kevin Walker and Max and myself and Sandra Ewan, and really from there it's just blown up. These 5 rooms now down here, we've got the plans for the storefront, but these 5 rooms are serving us well, and they have it looking amazing down here and on a very consistent schedule, and people are coming in, and we're serving families every week. And this morning, in fact, it was last week that we were notified that Unclaimed Baggage had done a fundraiser for us for the Fostering Love Community Closet. And this morning they came and presented a check for us to use for the Fostering Love Community Closet. And thanks to Brenda Cannerty, who works there at Unclaimed Baggage. I had lunch yesterday with the president of Unclaimed Baggage and talking about future partnerships and how that could ultimately benefit. There are people, we had a church approach me last week, and they say, we are seeing and hearing what's happening with the Community Care Village, and we want to be involved. And so I think about that, but that's where it all started. It started with us saying, hey, how can we minister better to foster families? And I can say that today that ministry is thriving. And like Sharon, I heard Sharon mention to the folks from Reclaim for Good today that there's a lot of great volunteers who are making that happen, and they love what they're doing, and they're all doing a phenomenal job. And so that's a huge blessing. Then y'all have seen the community garden sprout up. No pun intended. That's the second time I've used that joke today. But Chris and Julia Schultz, becoming members here and saying, well, y'all have got a lot of land around here. Have y'all ever thought about doing a community garden? And I had mentioned that. I'd talked to Philip Thomas Thompson about that. I'd talked to Doug Phillips, because he did the community garden down in downtown Scottsboro. Talked to Keith and Cynthia Smith, and it was like this was definitely an opportunity. And then before we knew it, Chris and Julia had mobilized a number of volunteers to come together and to plant, and we're getting our first harvest from that. Right? I talked about the cucamelons that kids got to eat last week, but then we gave away last Thursday. We had an event here for foster parents on Thursday morning. We gave away every one of the vegetables that we had picked to foster families last week. This week, Gary took the vegetables over to the staff at Rosewood Manor. And so the community garden's beginning to just in a very small way, just to be an extension, a blessing of us going beyond our walls to say, hey, thank you for what you do. We love you, and here's just a small token of our gratitude, and here's a way that we can bless you with that. We talk about another ministry that was dropped in our lap this year, the Grace Thrift Store, right? I've told y'all about how Max and them said, we really need a thrift store. We really need a thrift store. And I'm thinking, I just don't know. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, hey, somebody gave us a thrift store. And thanks to Sandra Guin and her jumping in and being the leader there, and volunteers who are there helping out and serving. And now we've even got people who are learning how to run the place, or not learning how, they can run the place. I know Miss Belinda's done that for Miss Sandra several times, and making that happen. And that's a revenue stream that's been created to come into the community care village and all these other projects. Even this, and these are all things that are happening now. So even this week, the last several weeks, we've had the community care village that have sponsored events here on Agape's campus for foster families. We just hosted a 4-month-long equipping event for foster families to be trained in something called trust-based relational intervention, TBRI. It's a way of addressing and engaging and connecting with kids in a disciplinary and a formational way that actually takes into consideration the kind of trauma that they've been through. But this kind of training is actually being applied in the juvenile justice system. It's being applied for kids on the spectrum. You know that it used to be about 1 in 200 kids were diagnosed as being on the spectrum of having autism and sensory disorders and things of that nature. Now it's 1 in 34. 1 in 34 kids. And so my generation of parents, our kids are getting diagnosed with these sensory disorders, and to some degree, the ways that we tried to discipline kids is we've got to tweak it. It's not that we don't discipline kids anymore, or that it looks that much different, but we actually take into account what they've experienced and make sure that we don't trigger the past traumas, or that we don't trigger that imbalance that exists in their body or in their brain to where they become dysregulated anymore. But we actually are. I think it's an extension that I'm honestly developmental psychology and pediatric neurochemistry has given us to say it's our privilege to know our kids, even the kids that are not ours biologically. And so, how can we not just know them in a superficial way, but how can we get to know them in the way that God has wired them, but then how this fallen world has impacted them? And then now let's be those agents of redemption and restoration, like we've always said we wanted to be. So we equip foster families in that. We're having a Hope for the Journey Parenting Conference this Friday night. We host the Foster and Adoptive Parent Association. We host them here the first Thursday of every month, so that they've got a place to meet and are just continuing to nurture those relationships. We've got this summer, we've got a government-funded grant program called Born Ready that is actually called Born Ready University. It's helping parents, once again, equipping parents to raise their kids in a way that's actually going to make them whole and successful adults. Ashley and Shane McElmore headed up the Strengthening Families program that was in partnership with the court system here in Scottsboro. All of those things happen because of, the openness of Agape Baptist Church to use its facilities to be a blessing to the community and to the community care village, for in many ways taking the lead and placing people in support positions to make these events happen. But that's just what's happening now, right? All the things that are upcoming are the things that maybe you've heard about in the past. It's probably been too long since we've had an update for those. You think about the Men's Recovery Center, right? We were given this 30 acres over here, 40,000 square feet of industrial warehouse space. And so 30,000 of those, we've actually provided a space for a new business in town called Amfab Steel Supply. And so they're beginning, they're working right now over there and have been since May 1st. And so they're working over there. And so there's jobs that have been provided over there. But then that other 10,000 square feet of industrial warehouse space, we call it the Green Bay Door Building because it's got 36 green roll-up bay doors. And Max has already developed architectural plans to turn that into mini beds recovery center for men who are struggling with addiction. We've priced out that renovation at about $350,000 because we found out we were going to have to put a sprinkler system in there. And so we talk about upcoming plans. Hey, that's one of the things that's upcoming. But also with Pilgrim Ministries dissolving now, we're praying for not just the funds to renovate the facility, but we're praying for the right leader or the right group to partner with. If there's another Pilgrim Ministries that's out there, hey, how can we partner with them? As a foster parent, I see over and over and over the ripple effect of men being lured away into a lifestyle of drugs and alcohol. And so we're cultivating the Addiction Recovery Center to be a direct response to that. So that Men's Recovery Center that's one of the projects that we're working on, and Max has been so diligent to do that. You've heard about the Hope Springs Senior Adult Community, the 65 and above independent living community that will be built on 10 acres back here. Y'all, that's probably been the thing that's taken up a lot of mine and Max's brain power in trying to understand what this can look like. Last week, our benefactor who's going to build it, Max, myself, and Brian Presson went and toured Redstone Village in Huntsville and just had a phenomenal time interacting with them about what this could look like back here and some of the lessons that they've learned, some of the pitfalls that they fell into that we can avoid, and just a wealth of experience in trying to figure out the kind of model that we want to pursue. And you can pray for that because, how you start is very critical, and we want to approach that with wisdom. And so we're praying for God's wisdom to find that right model, and then we're praying also for our benefactor, this man who is jumping in to build this. We want to pray for him that God would sustain him, that he would move in his life, and so you can join us in prayer for that because I think that's just as big of a part of how y'all can participate in that work before it's ever established, and so pray for him. And so that's the Hope Springs Senior Adult Community. I mentioned the Fostering Love storefront back here, and turning the pavilion and the storefront and building a big kids playground beside it as a destination for families and foster families to come and be on our campus. So that's another project that's upcoming. Another upcoming project is Agape Baptist Church had the unique privilege of being included in a grant. This grant was written for churches in Georgia, but when an organization in Georgia known as Restoration Rome heard about what was happening here with Agape and the Community Care Village, they said, you've already got the basics of what this grant is about. We want to include Agape in a grant to help y'all provide funds for you to become a trauma-informed church. And so this is huge. This is a bridge built into every other ministry where we're going to get into the messiness and the brokenness of people's lives going forward into the future. What it allows us to do is train up individuals to understand how to deal with people who, not just kids, but to deal with people who've experienced trauma. And so think about all the places that could have an impact. The men's program, right? The foster ministry. It'll impact the way our children in our nursery folks interact in our children's ministry. It'll transform how some of the other projects that we'll talk about with the women's program, with the vocational training program. It could even impact how we interact with some of the seniors who've experienced isolation and maybe pasts that they want to forget. It'll enable us to encounter them in a way that as a church family, we're equipped to now connect with them, empower them, and engage them in ways that help build them up and bring healing. And so Agape is being included in that grant, and will one day, Lord willing, have that designation as a trauma-informed church. So those are upcoming. Those are things we know are happening in the future. And some of them are big, some of them are small, but in terms of the kingdom of God, they're all big. But now I want to talk to you about dreams, right? What are we dreaming about? You think, well, isn't that enough, right? Well, according to 1 Corinthians 12, when God puts people here and he gifts them, then it's a very organic thing when we talk about dreams of what's next, what's in the future, what's happening that we feel like God might be leading us towards. And so these are all places of prayer. We talked about the Esther House. Jackson County does not have a domestic abuse shelter. Jackson County does not have, there's Awaken International Ministries. There are very few domestic safe houses for victims who've experienced human trafficking, which is an increasing problem in our nation. And so human trafficking could be kidnapping victims. It could be those who have been taken from their families and forced into the sex trade and prostitution. Right? All of these things we know are happening around us, but they're in the shadows. And what do we say is our mission? It's to run into those shadows with the gospel of Jesus Christ and with the church, and to shed light on the darkness. Because John chapter 1 tells us that when light shines in the darkness cannot overcome it. And so the Esther House would be, we already have a family who wants to donate land to partner and build this safe house up on the mountain, and already developing partnerships with the trade school and the community college to not just have a place for them to find healing, but for them to find hope in a future by gaining skills so that they can actually go out into the world. We feel like God's put people here to start vocational training. So when we it's one thing for us to see the unemployment rates, another thing for us to complain about all these people who don't have jobs. But what are we doing about it? We say, well, the government has programs for that. Yeah, let's see where that's got us, right? And so once again, do we have people in our church family and in other church families in this community who we can mobilize to invest in people who are looking for jobs, and yet maybe they don't have the same kind of background you have to have the same kind of awareness of work ethic and job skills. And so we see God opening a door for that through various connections and ways that the Lord's made himself clear. We think about the Community Care Family Clinic, which is a community urgent care we're looking to build in coordination with the Hope Springs community. Food bank, homeless shelter. What else could the Lord do? Well, it really is as wide and as varied as the body of Christ in Scottsboro. Because once again, it's not, the whole community care village model is not just about Agape Baptist Church, it's about the community. And so for us, we celebrate all these things. We recognize the immense stewardship that is involved in these things. And for you specifically, here on this Wednesday, I cannot overstate the necessity of intentional prayer. I really can't overstate the necessity of that. Why do things happen when they happen, right? Well, John Wesley once said that God does nothing except in response to his people's prayers. And so what if we take God at his word of Matthew chapter 7 when he says, ask and you'll receive, seek and you find, knock and the door will be open to you. And what if we take him at his word? Let's ask him. Let's ask him to give us insight for the right model for this Hope Springs senior adult community. Let's ask him to provide the right leader for that. Let's ask him to provide the other groups that want to come around us and help us renovate the building across the street. Let's ask for the volunteers here. And so you can volunteer also. You can be present for the leaders and for the people. My heart grieves when I hear about, Patrick and Kira being up here till 10 o'clock at night. Hey, I want to make sure there's people around them. And by God's grace, I think there were. But that's volunteers for people in the ministries of Agape Baptist Church. That's volunteers for the ministries of the Community Care Village. Because when you're present at Grace Thrift Store, you're present at in the Fostering Love Community Closet, then I want you to expect for God to open your eyes to the next step. And that's the other way that you can be involved, is not just to be present, but to expand it. Right? God's given, if God's called you to a place, He's given you gifts, and you can take those gifts and you can run with it. And so, for instance, I just thought of two ways. Every first Thursday night of every month, there's somebody who staffs the foster closet. That's a blessing to the foster families. But then, it would be great to have people here who step in and volunteer and say, that one night of the month, I'm going to help coordinate childcare. Now, we have childcare every Thursday night that we have the FAPA meeting, but that's one Thursday night a month. If we had members of Agape who said, hey, I want to come provide childcare, or I want to come help provide the meal for that night, you're being a direct blessing to those foster families. But two, and this was something I was talking to Gary about earlier, one of the things that I think would be widespread of a way we could use the community garden, right, is, we've already established that Agape is filled with good cooks, right? As Baptists, we love our food, and God has blessed you in how you are able to cook. And so what if one of the ministries that we had from the community garden is every week as we're getting this produce in, then what if we got together, and I'm using the we of majesty here. By we, I don't mean me. I mean y'all who can cook, right? But what if we got together and y'all took the ingredients from the community garden and added it to other ingredients and did freezer meals, so that when a foster family gets a new placement, or when we find out that one of our members has had a death in the family, or when we find out that there's somebody who's just had surgery, right? That we have a completely different freezer in our kitchen. We'll have to find space for it. But we'll have a completely different freezer in our kitchen to where we go and oh, hey, there's a squash casserole that was cooked by so-and-so, and it's got the date on it, and we take that, and hey, here's our church family. Even though we didn't know you were going to experience this, we planned for events like this, and we want to be a blessing to you in this way. It's just another way for us to show up and be present, and to show that there are people who say, you're not alone. And doing it with the ingredients that other people have put their hands on, and that God's given the growth in from our community garden. You say, well, that's a great idea, Ryan. It is, but since I can't cook, I'm not the one to do it. But somebody can. And so be present and think about ways that we can expand that ministry in those, and just like that. Because that's how each of these ministries will be fortified, and that's how we'll make sure they always stay relevant too. I think the biggest challenge for us in the next 5 years is going to be not resting on our laurels. It's going to be not years 25 to 30 for Agape Baptist Church. Will be us saying we want to continue to press the accelerator where God's calling us to move. And we want to continue to rally people around a mission that's actually making a difference. What God's done in the past is great, and we celebrate that. We don't overlook all of the blood, sweat, and tears and the thousands of volunteer hours that it took to make that happen. But we also don't want to act like that's the finish line. The finish line's where? It's when Jesus comes back, right? The finish line for the church, we're not, in that sense, we'll see a personal finish line, but I pray that none of us in this room ever see the finish line for Agape Baptist Church. I pray that God continues to use this far beyond us. And so that maybe, 40 years from now, when I'm Max's age, because I will be, 40 years from now, when I'm Max's age, then I can be looking at the next pastor of Agape Baptist Church and I can be saying, this is all that God's done. And these are all the people who contributed to it. And now take it, guard the good deposit that's been entrusted to you, and you go transform this community, and you take the gospel to the nations, and you build up the body of Christ just as we've done, right? What an incredible privilege that will be. But it starts now. It starts with us. And I'm thankful. For the past 5 years, I look forward to the next however many God gives me, because He's not done with us yet. So with that in mind, let me pray for us.